Notice what happens to your energy the moment someone doesn't reply to your text, or when a project you poured days into receives zero recognition. Notice how quickly your focus evaporates, your mood drops, and your internal drive vanishes into thin air. You think you have a discipline problem? You don't. You have a remote control problem. You've handed the buttons to everyone around you, and you're letting them decide how you feel every single hour of the day. Consider how most people navigate their daily lives. They wake up with a surge of good intentions. They outline their goals. They sit down to build something meaningful, a career, a business, a skill, or a healthier lifestyle. Then, the world steps in. A boss gives a lukewarm review. A client cancels. A social media post receives no engagement. A friend forgets to return a call. Immediately, the internal narrative shifts. The enthusiasm dies. The effort slows down. Psychologists refer to this dynamic as an external locus of control. It occurs when your emotional state, self-esteem, and sense of purpose are tethered to variables entirely outside your personal influence. When things go well, you feel invincible. When things stall, you feel completely paralyzed. This isn't just exhausting, it's a structural flaw in how you process reality. If every action requires a positive external echo to remain valid, you will forever remain at the mercy of unpredictable conditions. To break this pattern, you must understand why your brain operates this way in the first place. Human psychology was engineered for small, tightly knit social groups where immediate feedback meant survival. Ostracization meant danger. Approval meant safety. Because of this ancestral wiring, your brain treats every piece of external feedback as a life or death evaluation of your identity. When you publish a project, voice an opinion, or initiate a new habit, your subconscious mind immediately scans the horizon for a reaction. It hungers for applause, agreement, or confirmation that you did the right thing. And when the horizon is silent, your brain interprets that silence as rejection. The fundamental error is confusing outcome with effort. You believe that if an outcome is quiet, negative, or neutral, the effort itself was wasted. You've trained yourself to measure the validity of your actions solely by the response they generate from others. As long as you operate under this illusion, you aren't actually leading your own life. You're simply reacting to the audience. Real emotional independence begins when you decouple your internal standards from external feedback. Think about an anchor on a ship. When a storm hits, a ship without an anchor drifts wherever the current decides to pull it. It travels miles away from its path, battered by waves it cannot control. An anchored ship still experiences the storm. The waves hit it, the wind pushes against it, but its position remains fixed because it's tethered to something steady below the surface. Most people operate like an unanchored ship. A single comment can throw off their entire afternoon. A lack of praise can ruin their entire week. They spend decades building a life only to realize their daily mood is governed by people who aren't even paying attention to them. When you rely on external validation to feel good about your work, you are effectively giving the world permission to silence you whenever it chooses. Power isn't about ignoring reality or becoming cold and cynical. Power is knowing that the ocean can rage all it wants, but your core alignment remains untouched. There is a subtle trap in modern self-improvement that quietly reinforces this dependency. We are taught to measure everything, every step, every view, every dollar, every metric, every interaction. Metrics aren't inherently bad. They are useful tools for assessment. But when a metric transforms into a measurement of your personal value, it becomes toxic. When you write a sentence, record a video, study for an exam, or complete a difficult workout, the primary value lies in the act itself. It lies in the character you forged by showing up. When you immediately look around to see who noticed, you drain the intrinsic power out of the effort. You trade high-grade internal satisfaction for low-grade external approval. And here is the uncomfortable truth. The external world is inconsistent, distracted, and preoccupied with its own insecurities. If you wait for the world to give you permission to feel accomplished, you will wait forever. So how do you construct an internal anchor in everyday life? You begin by implementing a mental protocol called closed-loop execution. Here is how it works in practice. First, redefine what constitutes a complete task. A task is not complete when it is praised, purchased, or liked. A task is complete the moment you execute it to your personal standard. When you finish a workout, the goal was not to get a compliment on your physique. The goal was to execute the session. The moment the last rep is done, the loop is closed. Second, introduce a deliberate delay between execution and evaluation. When you publish work or take a decisive action, make it a strict rule not to check for reactions or feedback for at least 3 hours. Use that time to transition immediately to your next task. This break disrupts the brain's habit of seeking immediate dopamine from external reactions. It forces your mind to find closure internally rather than waiting for an outside signal. Third, evaluate your day using a single question. Did I execute according to my standards, regardless of the noise? If the answer is yes, the day was a victory. Consider the life of Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher. He was the most powerful individual in the known world. He had access to endless applause, total authority, and boundless wealth. Yet, every night in his private journal, never intended for publication, he wrote to remind himself not to be corrupted by praise or destabilized by criticism. He wrote, "Does an emerald lose its value if no one praises it?" Think about that metaphor for a second. A piece of gold doesn't become less valuable because a passerby fails to acknowledge it. A sharp blade doesn't become dull because someone misjudges its balance. Its properties are inherent. They exist within the object itself. When you develop an internal anchor, your standards become inherent. You produce high-quality work because that is who you are, not because you're begging for an ovation. You speak with clarity because you value truth, not because you're fishing for agreement. You maintain your discipline because it respects your future, not because you want someone to tell you, "Good job." When you operate from this state of mind, an extraordinary shift occurs. You stop being needy, and paradoxically, that is precisely when you become influential. The next time you feel that familiar itch, that desperate urge to check for a reaction, to explain yourself, or to seek reassurance, pause. Recognize that moment for what it really is, a test of ownership. Ask yourself, who holds the remote control right now? Is it you, or is it an audience of distracted strangers? Take the remote control back. Set your standard quietly. Execute your work relentlessly. Close the loop internally. Let the world react however it wants. You have bigger things to build.